Right, so for anyone doubting that the UK is increasingly turning into a fascist state, the ongoing developments since yesterday's peace march in London, in celebration of the ceasefire that had finally passed between Israel and Gaza, Israel and Hamas, became a scene of abject police brutality, lies and illicit arrests, an authoritarian clampdown on our right to freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. Just one more protest in the long line of them calling for that ceasefire. The only difference this time was people actually celebrating it finally coming to pass. From arresting the chief steward, decades-long organiser of London marches and founder of the Stop the War coalition, Chris Nineham, to the dragging around of a pregnant woman, to the lies told about a breach in the police lines at an event to lay flowers to the memory of dead Gazan children, the incidents have mounted up, but it didn't even stop there. The chaos has not ended even though the march was over, with MPs being questioned by the police under caution who were in attendance. Some 70 others joining Chris Nineham in being arrested, and for what? What ultimately when there was no violence? Taken together with the crackdown on journalists speaking up for Palestine, and we're only talking about Gaza here, there have been displays of this treatment with regards to other issues as well, such as whistleblowing on child abuse and safeguarding. We are descending into fascism, into abject authoritarianism. And the question is, who is ordering it? Because this treatment of the public has only gone on since Starmer came to power. What we're witnessing now is so much worse than what we saw under the Tories, which was bad enough. So surely all roads here point to him. Right, so welcome to the fascist state of Keir Starmer, it seems, where you can protest in favour of a genocidal regime, as a handful did by way of counter-protest on Saturday, or you can face arrest for celebrating a ceasefire passing. A ceasefire Starmer himself has claimed to be welcome, yet the treatment by the Met Police and the arrests and questioning and lies imply otherwise. He's the Prime Minister, he is running the country, and this is what the Met Police have done, despite the truth coming out for all to see. So that was two clips there that have been doing the rounds. The first one much more prominently showing Jeremy Corbyn, currently suspended Labour MP John McDonnell, and many others being allowed through by the Met Police with their flowers to remember the children of Gaza who had been killed at the hands of the Israeli regime. The second clip featured a slightly different view of the same event. In this one, you could briefly see Green Party Deputy Leader Zach Polansky with his bunch of flowers being allowed through by the Met Police. Despite the clear evidence of what happened, the Met still put out on their social media the claim that the group that forced its way through the police line is now held at the northwest corner of Trafalgar Square. Anyone in that group should now disperse and leave the area. Anyone remaining in breach of the conditions or inciting further breaches will be arrested. Well, that's quite the difference in tone and quite the difference in interpretation of the facts, isn't it? The Met Police have blatantly been caught out lying. Despite the peacefulness of that scene, it didn't last that way, and although all three politicians took to social media to state the truth that I mentioned there, much more in line with the scenes you've now seen in those clips, and I covered these in a video I put out yesterday, it's worth reminding us of the views of one of these individuals in particular, that of Jeremy Corbyn, who said of the events following these clips that this is not an accurate description of events at all. I was part of a delegation of speakers who wished to peacefully carry and lay flowers in memory of children in Gaza who had been killed. This was facilitated by the police. We did not force our way through. When we reached Trafalgar Square, we informed police that we would go no further, lay down flowers and disperse. At that point, the chief steward, Chris Nineham was arrested. We then turned back and dispersed. I urged the police to release all body cam footage and retract its misleading account of events. We've now seen what happened as well, and we now know the police let them through. They were carrying flowers, and yet still this ended with the arrest of the event organiser and the literal founder of the Stop the War Coalition, Chris Nineham. A peace sign flashed from the back of a police van, the enduring image of police brutality on what should have been a day of celebration and cheer, clamped down on instead by a government, it seems, stuffed full of Zionists who won't repeal the legislation passed by the Tories and are instead using it even more harshly. But I'll come back to that point in a moment. Nineham was arrested and later released on bail after being charged under that aforementioned legislation, the Public Order Act, of organising an illegal demonstration. Yet everyone marching, all those people, everyone speaking yesterday, broke the law apparently because it was all illegal. Yet the police had changed the route of the march already once to appease the likes of the Board of Deputies and the CST to ensure the safety of British Jewry apparently. Never mind the fact that in that delegation with Corbyn and McDonnell was 87-year-old former Labour member and Holocaust survivor Stephen Kapos, and a great many other Jewish people besides in that march. Now, Kapos felt perfectly safe, but besides that, how can the march have been illegal if the police allowed it to happen and indeed had altered it? If you want an even more blatant example of the abuse on show, how about the Met arresting people who weren't part of this march at all? Several people who supposedly bypassed a blockade between Whitehall and Trafalgar Square had simply found themselves there, having got off at Charing Cross Station, behind the blockade. They hadn't bypassed it at all, they just got off the bloody tube. Many of those arrested are still being held. On top of that, John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn were called in by the Met that evening for questioning themselves under caution. Who ordered that? On what grounds? Release the body cam footage, as Corbyn has said. We already have other footage we've seen. What did McDonnell and Corbyn do with a bunch of flowers that requires questioning under caution? This is fascism. This is what it looks like. Intimidation of MPs now. They'll both have Palestinian constituents, I'm sure, who they were serving by being on that match, that they'll have been representing as being part of that perfectly legal and organised and Met-approved march. And it's very difficult to see how them being brought in for questioning wasn't something that was ordered from much higher up. Was it Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary? Perhaps Starmer himself did it, though. Goodness knows he'd love to be rid of Corbyn, wouldn't he? Couldn't beat him in an election. Let's try and get him arrested and stitched up for some crime that he didn't commit. But one of his suspended MPs too? Is this genuinely how much Starmer hates the left? Sadly, I can believe that. As for the legislation that is being abused here, the Public Order Act, completely unfit for purpose as it is, draconian as these powers are. These aren't just my words or my opinions either, by the way. It's the view of Human Rights Watch, who in an excerpt from a Middle East Eye article titled HRW, Human Rights Watch, UK failure to revoke anti-protest laws seriously undermines democratic rights, said, the UK government is seriously undermining democratic rights by failing to revoke draconian anti-protest laws introduced by the previous administration, Human Rights Watch said today. In its latest world report reviewing human rights practice in more than 100 countries, Human Rights Watch said that the Labour government is failing to repeal anti-protest measures and continuing to appeal against a court ruling that found them unlawful. Last May, civil rights group Liberty won a legal challenge against the Home Office over public order laws that handed the police sweeping powers to crack down on protests. The measures lowered the threshold for police to restrict peaceful protest by redefining what is considered serious disruption to community life from significant and prolonged to more than minor. Two judges found that then Home Secretary Suella Braverman passed the measures despite not having the backing of Parliament to do so. Under the new Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, the Home Office announced in December that it was appealing against the court's decision. Furthermore, the new government has failed to repeal the Public Order Act 2023 and the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act 2022, laws that vastly expanded police powers and have seen hundreds of peaceful protesters, predominantly pro-Palestine and climate activists, arrested. On every measure, this Labour government is more hardline and more authoritarian and more fascistic than even the last Tory government was. All of this is in breach of pre-election promises made, par for the course with Keir Starmer, who, despite being a former human rights lawyer, is failing abjectly to uphold human rights, the right to freedom of speech, the right to assembly, the right to protest. Instead of repealing legislation that curtails that, as promised, they're abusing it even more. And it's very hard to separate that action, the thinking that drives that, from the devotion to Zionism and the financial backing of the Israel lobby that comes with it to Starmer and far too many others in his government. These laws must be repealed. Our right to protest, our human rights are being taken from us bit by bit, and we can't stand idly by and just let it happen, as too often too many people in this country stand by the wayside and allow. For more on the events as they came to pass on Saturday, please do check out this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe to the channel as well. It all helps support the channel, which is very much appreciated, and also ensures you don't miss out on new daily content. And I'll hopefully therefore see you on the next vid. Cheers folks.